As you guys know, I am super pro ranked voting. I think it is the most important policy right now. And supposedly, this video is going to prove me wrong. A ton of people have commented that I need to watch it. So let's watch it.
Democracy might be mathematically impossible. This isn't a value judgment, a comment about human nature, nor a statement about how rare and unstable democratic societies have been in the history of civilization. Our current attempt at democracy, the methods we're using to elect our leaders, are fundamentally irrational. And this is a well-established mathematical fact. This is a video about the math that proved that fact and led to a Nobel Prize. It's a video about how groups of people make decisions and the pitfalls that our voting systems fall into. One of the simplest ways to hold an election is to ask the voters to mark one candidate as their favorite on the ballot. And when the votes are counted, the candidate with the most votes wins the election. This is known as first.
Okay, I bet he's going to go down the route of, but you don't win the majority,
past
right?
the post voting.
Which is correct.
The name is kind of a misnomer, though. There is no post that any of the candidates need to get past. The winner is just the candidate with the most votes. This method likely goes back to antiquity. It has been used to elect members of the House of Commons in England since the 14th century.
That's why a lot of English countries,
it's still a common voting system with 44 countries in the world using it to elect its leaders. 30 of these countries were former British colonies. The U.S., being a former British colony, still uses first past the post in most of its states to elect their representatives to the electoral college.
I knew Maine had ranked voting. I didn't know Georgia, Louisiana, California, and Washington did. Huh.
But first past the post has problems. If you are selecting representatives in a parliament, you can and frequently do get situations where the majority of the country did not vote for the party that ends up holding the power.
I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe this is a big issue in Israel right now with like Netanyahu. Obviously, very large topic at the moment. But he's just like the most popular unliked candidate. Like there's so many candidates, but they're all hated, and he wins like a small percentage of the vote, like far less than 50, something like 20. I don't actually know for sure. And because of that, he wins, because he gets the highest percentage. He's just the most liked, least liked candidate, and that's why he's winning. Thankfully in America, at least we have two candidates where they're both like close to 50% liked, I guess, even though in reality, like neither one's approval rating is going to be above 50%. But at least in America, it's not like a candidate is winning with 20% of the vote.
In the last 100 years, there were 21 times a single party held a majority of the seats in the British Parliament. But only 2 of those times did the majority of the voters actually vote for that party.
So a party which only a minority of the people voted for ends up holding all of the power in government. Another thing that happens because of first past the post is that similar parties end up stealing votes from each other.
Yeah, this is the biggest issue. He's going to talk about Al Gore, obviously. I was going to use Al Gore as an example, funny enough. But like Lincoln is another example, right? Lincoln was a spoiler candidate. Abraham Lincoln, that is. He famously went door to door and said, "Make me your second favorite candidate." And when people saw that their favorite candidate was going to lose, they voted for him instead, right? And he didn't win a majority of the votes in the country. He was just the most popular of the 4 people that were running, and that's how he ended up winning the election.
U.S. presidential.
Al Gore's very similar. He lost Florida by like a couple hundred votes, I think, because there was a Green Party candidate, and the Green Party's a little bit more left than even the Democratic Party. So the people who didn't want Al Gore voted for the Green Party candidate, and had the Green Party candidate not run, likely all those voters would have voted for Al Gore, and Al Gore would have won.
Election essentially between Al Gore and George W. Bush. At that point, every state in the nation used first past the post to determine the outcome of the election. Bush had more votes in Florida, but by a ridiculously slim margin. It was fewer than 600 votes.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah, okay,
there
so
was
it was a couple
another
hundred.
candidate on the ballot, Ralph Nader. Nader was a Green candidate. He was certainly to the left of either Gore or Bush.
And what we need is the upsurge of citizen concern, people concern, poor, rich, or middle class, to counteract the power of the special interest.
And he got almost 100,000 votes.
Sorry, I'm snickering because it's just like, that statement repackaged is the exact thing that like every Green Party and like every most left party says. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say there's no plan behind it. Sometimes there's a plan behind it, but like just that statement alone is oftentimes enough to get votes. It's hilarious to me.
I just don't know if I can, with a conscience, vote for Bush or Gore.
I will vote for Ralph Nader.
Most of those voters were devastated that by voting for Nader rather than Gore, they ended up electing Bush.
Sorry for pausing so much, but I genuinely feel like this election is the first one that really created the like two terrible candidates running against each other kind of narrative. I think Obama versus Romney kind of turned that off a little bit. People love to hate on both of them. I don't think either was great, but at least they were both like cordial. And I don't think either was like villain versus villain, but like with Bush, I don't know. That's the most powerful vice president in history.
This is what is called a spoiler
Brought us
effect.
into a war we shouldn't have been
all
in.
Nader voters preferred Gore to Bush, but in a first-past-the-post system, they had no way of expressing that preference because you could only vote for one candidate.
So first past the post incentivizes voters to vote strategically.
Say there are 5 parties. One of them will be the smallest one.
Okay, this is the most important point of all voting systems for me, and that is voting strategically. And I'm very curious if he's bringing it up this early in the video, how he's going to use that argument, because every single time I watch one of these videos, they start with first past the post. They then go into ranked voting, and then they have like some stupid reason why ranked voting doesn't work that's super minor. And then they go into all these other voting systems, and because they cover them after, they seem like solutions to ranked voting. But you have to keep bringing up strategic voting, which is the most important aspect of a good voting system. If people can strategically vote, it always just ends up turning into first past the post again. And I'll get into that again later. But I'm really worried that this video is going to follow all the others. I love Veritasium, but that is my current
They
worry.
won't
Just
win.
off this
Why
already.
would you vote for them? This is also true if you have 4 parties.
Sorry, I kind of cut him off, but essentially, I'll just recap what he's going to say. Essentially, right now, why would you vote for a third-party candidate, right? Let's say, like, Trump, Biden, Kanye. I don't fucking know. Let's say you think Kanye is by far the best president. Obviously, you're not going to vote for Kanye because he doesn't have a chance, so you have to vote between Trump or Biden, even though you think Kanye is the best. That was probably the worst example of candidates I could have given, but
Or
you get the point.
3 parties. This winner-takes-all voting system leads to a concentration of power in larger parties,
These guys are the best guys.
eventually leading to a 2-party system. This effect is common enough that it has a name: Duverger's Law.
Never knew that.
So first past the post isn't a great option. So what else could we do?
Well, we can say that a candidate can only win an election if they get a majority, at least 50% plus 1 of the vote. But
He's
what
going
if
to tie this into ranked voting. Oh, but what if nobody has above 50%? Then nobody can win. So then we delete the smallest candidate, and then we have them go, they re-vote, and then we delete the new smallest. I bet that's
hold an
how it
election
goes into
and
ranked
no
voting.
one gets a majority? We could go to the people who voted for the candidate with the fewest votes and ask
There
them
it
to
is.
vote again, but choose a different candidate. And we could repeat this process over and over, eliminating the smallest candidate until one candidate reaches a majority. But holding many elections is a big hassle. So instead, we could just ask voters to rank their preferences from their favorite to their least favorite, and if their favorite candidate gets eliminated, we go to their second preferences. When the polls close, you count the voters' first choices. If any candidate has a majority of the votes, then they're the winner. But if no candidate has a majority, the candidate with the fewest votes gets eliminated, and their ballots are distributed to those voters' second preferences. And this keeps happening until one candidate has a majority of the votes.
This is mathematically identical to holding repeated elections. It just saves the time and hassle, so it's referred to as instant runoff.
But the system is
Or
also
ranked
known
choice
as
voting.
preferential
Oh, there we
voting
go.
or ranked choice voting. And instant runoff doesn't just affect the voters, it affects how the candidates behave.
Yes! Yes. Oh my gosh.
towards each other.
This is the most important part. This is the reason I always talk about ranked choice voting, because when you want to be somebody's second choice, you can't turn it into an arguing match. I can't call you the villain, because now if I'm constantly spreading negativity, most people, if I'm not your favorite, I'm going to be your least favorite, and that is not a winning strategy. It requires the candidates to actually like each other and work together.
It was the Minneapolis mayor's race, 2013.
I had
They were
no
using
clue
ranked
that there was a good example of
The
this, so
incumbent
this is
mayor
awesome.
had stepped down, and there were all of these people came out from the woodwork wanting to be mayor. There were 35 candidates. And so you would think if there's 35 candidates, you'd want to dunk on someone, you'd want to like kind of elbow yourself into the spotlight. That's not what happened. These 35 candidates, all of them were really
That makes
nice
perfect
to each other. They were all
sense.
super cordial, super polite, to the degree that at the end of the final mayoral debate, they all came together and they sang Kumbaya together.
That's really corny. That's. I have no clue how I've never heard of this.
The amount of vitriol and anger and partisan, mudslinging that we're all used to see this vision of an actual kumbaya. It's not even a joke. All of these people getting along, so desperate for second and third choices from other people that they're like, I'm gonna be the picture perfect, kindest candidate possible.
But there's also a problem with instant runoff. There can be cases where a candidate doing worse can actually help get them elected.
Okay. Yes, this is true, but it's not mathematically likely in the real world. In fact, it's so unlikely that I don't even think it's really worth bringing up. That's my current opinion. He could convince me otherwise, but that is my current opinion. Let's see his argument.
Let's say we have 3 candidates, Einstein, Curie, and Bohr. Now, Einstein and Bohr have very conflicting views, while Curie is ideologically in the center. So let's say Einstein gets 25% of the vote, Curie gets 30, and Bohr gets 45.
Right.
No one got a majority, so it goes to the second round, with Einstein being eliminated, and because people who voted for Einstein put down Curie as their second choice, well, Curie ultimately gets elected.
Makes a lot of
But
sense.
now imagine that Bohr has a terrible campaign speech or proposes a very unpopular policy, so bad that some of his voters actually switch over to Einstein's side.
I don't see this as likely, where they go from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other. They would likely switch between, like, maybe some would go all the way to the other side, right? This is essentially a political spectrum, right? You have all the way far left, all the way far right, somewhere in the middle, right? Nobody's going to be like, oh, Trump gave such a terrible speech that I'm going to go all the way to the like Kamala if there were some candidate in the middle, right? They would transition to that middle candidate and then go to the other. Yes, some people would leapfrog, but that's going to be a small minority. What could happen is if she was at 25%, he was at 30, less people vote for him, more vote for her, now he's eliminated, right? The situation is still possible, but I don't like the way he's portraying it.
Now it's Curie.
So we'll
that
just
gets
assume this
eliminated.
is correct.
And because she's more moderate, half of her voters select.
Okay, no, but his argument requires the moderate voter to be the one that's eliminated. Which doesn't make sense to me, because the only way that would happen is if all of the voters that like him leapfrog here, but here he's saying because they're moderate that they're going to split 50-50. That argument doesn't make sense, right? You can't say, oh, the right candidate did something wrong, so they're all going to vote left and eliminate the moderate, but because it's moderate, you split it 50-50. You can't do that, because why would they leapfrog here but then split 50-50 here? That makes no sense.
Einstein and the other half select Bohr in the second round. And this leads to Bohr winning. So Bohr doing worse in the first round?
The thing is, like, right, you could say, oh, this is a bad example. I would agree, yes. There are even better examples, but every single one of these examples, when you bring it into the real world, is so incredibly unlikely to happen. And on top of that, it's still significantly better than the outcome that would have happened through first past the vote. Every single time. So this is not a solid argument against ranked choice voting being a good voting system. It's a fine argument for why it's not perfect. And I know that's the point of this video, right? It's called Why It's Mathematically Impossible, right? It's a fine argument for why it's not perfect, but to me, the goal is to get the best voting system out there.
Round actually leads to him winning the election. Clearly, this isn't something that we want in a voting system. This is what the French mathematician Condorcet also thought.
Interesting. Okay. I would have assumed he'd go from ranked choice voting to board account and then finish with Condorcet. That's usually how these videos go. So this is a little bit
Condorcet was one
different
of the
route.
first people applying logic and mathematics to rigorously study voting systems.
I would argue the Condorcet method has drastically set back society, genuinely, because it has become such a popular argument against ranked choice voting. And then people are like, oh, so then we should do the Condorcet method. And then you can so easily say that there's so many arguments for why the Condorcet method sucks, right? So you just instantly cross that out. But because that countered ranked choice voting, it's like, okay, fine, we'll just stick with what we have currently. That is my issue with the Condorcet method. I think Condorcet was a great mathematician,
Making him one of the
or like
founders of a
political
branch of
argument,
mathematics known
arguer, or
as
whatever he
social
was.
choice
But
theory. He was
I do
working
think the
during the
Condorcet
time of the
method
French Revolution,
was terrible
so fairly determining the will of the
for
people
society.
was having a cultural moment right then.
I believe he did. I don't want to say that because I don't think it's true.
In 1784, Condorcet's contemporary at the French Royal Society of Science, Jean-Charles de Borda, proposed a voting method.
Board account.
You ask the voters to rank the candidates. If there are 5 candidates, ranking someone first gives that candidate 4 points. Ranking them second would give them 3,
Let me finish
and
and then
so
I'll talk
on,
about this.
with 0 points being awarded for last place.
Okay, there's several issues with this. The first one is, how many points do you get for how many candidates, right? If we had 100 candidates running and you got 100 points here, 99 points here, there's really no difference between first and second place. We're not really distinguishing our vote between first and second because the winner is going to get thousands of votes and you're only able to distinguish 1 point between them. So the number of candidates matters. So the winning candidate depends on a factor that shouldn't matter, which is how many candidates there are. So essentially, you're still having the ability for spoilers because one party could say, oh, wow, we would mathematically win if we add more candidates, and then they add a bunch more candidates. So that is dumb. The second thing is strategic voting, once again, which he brought up earlier, and I bet that's the point, or the route he goes down, which is, let's say I really want Trump to win, but Kamala's my second candidate, and Kanye's my third, right? Well, Kamala clearly has the second best chance of winning. So if I really want Trump to win, what I'm going to do is put her at the bottom and put Kanye second. That way Kamala's getting less votes than Trump, and that way Trump has a higher chance of winning, right? Strategic voting. The issue with this is if people on both sides do this really heavily and they all like Kanye the least, but they're all putting him in the middle because they think he has the least chance of winning, we could actually have the least popular candidate end up getting elected because everybody put them in the middle to boost their candidate's chances of winning. Very, very, very bad situation. That's how you get extremely radical candidates elected. That is why board account is one of the only systems that I would say is remarkably worse than what we have today.
But the board account has a problem because the number of points given to each candidate is dependent on the total number of candidates. Adding extra people
I didn't think
that
he'd
have
bring
no
this point
chance
up,
of
but
winning
I'm glad he did.
can affect the winner. Because of this, Condorcet hated Borda's idea. He wrote that it was...
Is he not going to bring up the strategic voting side? That is a massive point.
bound to lead to error because it relies on irrelevant factors for its judgments.
I believe
So
I've heard
in
that quote before.
1785, Condorcet published an essay in which he proposed a new voting system, one he thought was the most fair.
He's not going to bring up the strategic voting. That's
Basically,
crazy
the winner needs
to
to
me.
beat every other candidate in a head-to-head election.
Condorcet.
But with more than 2 candidates, do you need to hold a large number of head-to-head elections
I mean,
to pick the winner?
this is a little bit more complicated for me to write out, so I should wait for him to explain it. But overall, the issues of the Condorcet method is ties are incredibly, incredibly likely, and you can still sort of strategically vote by once again ranking candidates underneath other ones to boost the number of wins that a different candidate has. But Condorcet method's fine.
Well, no. Just ask the voters to
Overall,
rank their
other than
preferences,
the
just
ties
like in
part.
instant runoff, and then count how many voters rank each candidate higher than each other candidate. This feels like the most fair voting method.
It's essentially another way to tally the winner from a ranked choice voting ballot, which is why I mostly
This
think
voting
it's fine.
system was actually discovered 450 years earlier by Raymond Lull, a monk who was looking at how church leaders were chosen. But Lull's ideas didn't make an impact because his book, Ars Electionis, The Art of Elections, was lost and only rediscovered in 2001. So the voting system is named after Condorcet and not Lull. But will there always be a winner in this way? Let's try Condorcet's method for choosing dinner between you and two friends. There are 3 options: burgers, pizza, or sushi.
Okay.
You really like burgers.
This is going to be a good
so that's
example,
your
but
first
anytime you have
preference.
3 people,
Your second choice is pizza,
all these
and
voting
you put
systems will
sushi
lead to a tie.
last. Your friend prefers pizza, then sushi, then burgers, and your other friend prefers
I'm really
sushi,
disappointed
then
in this video
burgers,
from
then
Veritasium,
pizza.
I'm not going to lie.
Now, if you choose burgers, it can be argued that sushi should have won instead, since 2 of you prefer sushi over burgers, and only 1 prefers burgers to sushi. However, by the same argument, pizza is preferred to sushi, and burgers are preferred to pizza, by a margin of 2 to 1 on each occasion. So it seems like you and your friends are stuck in a loop. Burgers are preferred to pizza, which is preferred to sushi, which is preferred to burgers, and...
So this can happen with Condorcet on large-scale elections. A better example would have been a larger-scale election that shows this same phenomenon happening. It's incredibly likely in Condorcet because essentially in Condorcet you win with like 3 votes, or in this case, yeah, if you end up getting 3 votes, essentially, you don't get a number of votes, you get a number of wins, right? How do people prefer you over this other candidate on average, right? Essentially, everybody will vote, and they'll be like, okay, Trump versus, let's say it's Trump, Kamala, Kanye, Biden, right? And people will say, okay, people prefer Trump over Kamala, they prefer Trump over Kanye, but they prefer Biden over Trump, okay? And then they'll put that in a grid. And then they'll look at Kanye. They're like, okay, Trump over Kanye, we already said that, but Kanye over Kamala and Kanye over Biden, right? And you basically go, and it's just, how does the country prefer you over other candidates, and whoever's the most preferred over other candidates wins. That's how Condorcet works. I'm sorry if I explained that and you guys already understood it, or if I just made it more confusing. The issue with this example is every single voting method is going to lead it to a tie here because you only have 3 people. If I want burgers, you want pizza, you want sushi as your top choice, cool. 3-way tie, regardless. Ranked choice voting. There's no bottom to eliminate. Board account. Everybody has a first, a second, and a third. No voting system works in this method. So this is not disproving Condorcet
so
method.
on.
This is just a society where there is no correct answer.
This situation is known as Condorcet's paradox.
Terrible example of Condorcet paradox.
Condorcet died before he could resolve this problem
Terrible.
with his voting system. He was politically active during the French Revolution, writing a draft of France's constitution. In 1793, during the Reign of Terror, when Le Montaigne came to power, he was deemed a traitor for criticizing the regime, specifically their new constitution. In the next year, he was arrested and died in jail. Over the next 150 years, dozens of mathematicians were proposing their own voting systems, or modifications to Condorcet's or Borda's ideas. One of those mathematicians was Charles Dodgson, better known as Lewis Carroll. When he wasn't writing Alice in Wonderland, he was trying to find a system to hold fair elections.
But every voting system had similar kinds of problems. You'd either get Condorcet loops, or other candidates that had no chance of winning would affect the outcome of the election.
In 1951, Kenneth Arrow published his PhD thesis, and in it he outlined 5 very and reasonable conditions that a rational voting system should have.
I was going to say, okay, another option for ranked choice voting is as long as you have 50% of the second place votes or higher, you cannot be eliminated yet. This way, if you are still liked by a lot of people, you're not eliminated for not having anybody's first place vote yet, and then a very overall liked candidate can still be chosen. So in a 4-person election, for example, if every single person puts one of those candidates in second place, they would be the first person eliminated because they're nobody's first place vote. But odds are that'd be a very good choice of candidate because everybody wants them second. So what you say is as long as you have 50% of the second place vote or above, you stay along. You still have to eventually get a majority of the first place votes as people are eliminated. but it's another like form of ranked choice voting. That's
if
something
everyone
I'd
in the
like
group
to
chooses
bring
one
up.
option over
'Cause
another,
nobody-
the outcome.
I don't know. I don't want to say I invented it because I'm sure somebody else has thought of it, but I've never seen anybody else talk about it. And that's, in my opinion, another option that is better than ranked choice voting that semi improves its like argument against the Condorcet
Should
paradox.
reflect that. Condition number 1, if everyone in the group chooses one option over another, the outcome should reflect that. If every individual in the group prefers to eat sushi over pizza, then the group as a whole should prefer sushi over pizza. This is known as unanimity. Condition 2. No single person's vote should override the preferences of everyone else. If everyone votes for pizza except one person who votes for sushi, the group should obviously choose pizza. If a single vote is decisive, that's not a democracy, that's a dictatorship. Condition 3. Everyone should be able to vote however they want, and the voting system must produce a conclusion for society based on all the ballots every time. It can't avoid problematic ballots or candidates by simply ignoring them, or just guessing randomly. It must reach the same answer for the same set of ballots every time. This is called unrestricted domain. Condition 4. The voting system should be transitive. If a group prefers burgers over pizza and pizza over sushi, then they should also prefer burgers over sushi. This is known as transitivity. Condition 5. If the preference of the group
Don't know if transitivity is that important because I don't know if it's possible.
is sushi over pizza, the introduction of another option, like burgers, should not change
This
that
is very
preference.
important to me.
Sure, the group might collectively rank burgers above both, or in the middle, or at the bottom, but the ranking of sushi over pizza should not be affected by
This
the
is
new
the spoilers
option.
argument.
This is called the independence of irrelevant alternatives. But here's the thing. Arrow proved that satisfying all 5 of these conditions in a ranked voting system with 3 or more candidates is impossible. This
let's get
is
rid of the
Arrow's
least important, which is
impossibility theorem,
transitivity, in
and it
my
was
opinion.
so groundbreaking that Arrow was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1972. So I want to go through a version of his proof based on a formulation by Giannakopoulos.
So let's say there are 3 candidates.
I'm really disappointed he mentioned that guy won the Nobel Prize because people are now just going to comment on this video. Oh, you're just disagreeing with the Nobel Prize winner, so you're a fucking idiot. No, you're misunderstanding. I'm disagreeing with the conclusion, but the thing that won him the Nobel Prize was the proof.
It's running for election.
Proof.
Aristotle,
I obviously
Bohr,
agree with.
and Curie. But we'll refer to them
Proof.
as A, B, and C.
And we have a collection of voters that will line up in order. So we have voter 1, 2, 3, and so on, all the way up to N. Each of these voters is free to rank A, B, and C however they like. I'll even allow ties.
Now, the first thing we want to show is that if everyone...
don't allow ties. Do not allow ties in a voting method. Absolutely fucking terrible idea.
ranks a particular candidate first or last, then society as a whole must also rank that candidate first or last.
I hate how he hasn't mentioned ties the entire video, and now he's just allowing it here during the time of the proof, which is just going to get incredibly confusing because it adds multiple more layers to
Let's
the math.
arbitrarily pick candidate B. If, say, half of the voters rank B first and half rank B last, then the claim is our voting system must put B either first or last, and we'll prove it by contradiction. So say this is how everyone voted. If our system does not put B first or last, but rather in the middle, say A is ranked above B, which is above C, then we'll get a contradiction. Because if
Due to
each of our voters
transitivity.
moved C above A, then by unanimity, C must be ranked above A. However, because we didn't change the position of any A relative to B, A must still be ranked above B. And because we didn't change the position of any C relative to B, C must still be ranked below B. And by transitivity, if A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then A must be ranked above C. But this contradicts the result by unanimity.
Another thing I want to mention here is the math on examples like this works out really well when you have 10 candidates and you make it a perfect tie every single time. The thing is, in real elections, you'll never get a perfect tie 5 and 5 like this. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have somebody that has an extra voter, or several thousand votes, because at the end of the day, you have millions of people voting.
And that proves that if everyone ranks a candidate first or last, then society must...
If everyone out of a national election votes a candidate first or last, everyone, be for real right
also
now. Be for real.
First or last.
Now let's do a thought experiment where every voter puts B at the bottom of their ranking. We'll leave the ranking of A and C arbitrary.
Well then, by unanimity, we know that B must be at the bottom of society's ranking. And we'll call this setup Profile 0. Now, we'll create Profile 1, which is identical to Profile 0, except the first voter moves B from the bottom to the top. This, of course, doesn't affect the outcome, but we can keep doing this, creating Profiles 2, 3, 4, and so on, with one more voter flipping B from the bottom to the top each time. If we keep doing this, there will eventually come a voter whose change from having B at the bottom to B at the top will first flip society's ranking, moving B to the top. Let's call this voter the pivotal voter, and we'll label the profile Profile P. Profile O is then the profile right before the pivotal change happens. Let's now create a Profile Q, which is the same as P, except the pivotal voter moves A above B. By independence of irrelevant alternatives, the social rank must also put A above B, since for all of our voters, the relative position of A and B is the same as it was in Profile O. And B must be ranked above C, because the relative positions of B and C are the same as they were in Profile P, where our pivotal voter moved B to the top. By transitivity, A must be ranked above C in the social ranking. This is true regardless of how any of the non-pivotal voters rearrange their positions of A and C, because these rearrangements don't change the position of A relative to B or C relative to B.
Let me think about this for a second. I don't know if I agree with this. C is above A in every case. B is only above C in half. Therefore, C should win. And you know what
This means the pivotal voter is actually a dictator for determining society's preference.
I also don't like this argument because you can't say one vote switching over makes that person a dictator, because at the end of the day, the rest of the country was perfectly split, allowing one change to make the difference, right? That's not a dictator. That is still a majority. You know what I mean, right? If, let's say, Trump won, there were 101 people voting, Trump had 50 votes, Kamala had 50 votes, and one more person voted for Kamala, that doesn't make them a dictator. That makes any one of those 51 people a dictator, because at any point they can change their vote to the other side and make the other person win. That makes every single person a dictator, and that's how a democracy works. I don't
Of A over C.
I don't agree with
this. The social
this.
rank will always agree with the pivotal voter regardless of what the other voters do.
It's not regardless of what the other voters do. Because if the other voters switch, then they become that pivotal voter. Every single person has the ability to become that pivotal voter in your argument. Therefore, if every person is a pivotal voter, there is no pivotal voter. I don't
run a similar thought experiment where we put
correct.
C at the bottom and prove that there is again a dictator who, in this case, determines the social preference of A over B.
And it turns out this voter is the same one who determines the social preference for A over C.
The pivotal voter?
Just to recap, if every single person says the exact same thing, exactly split 50-50, like perfectly contradicting, then one person who doesn't do that is going to make the difference, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But in what universe are we going to have an exact split 50-50 of everybody else? It's just...
is therefore a complete dictator. So, is democracy doomed?
I think this is a terrible argument.
Well, Arrow's impossibility theorem seems to say so. If there are 3 or more candidates to choose from, there is no rank.
I'm not saying this is a dumb video, by the way, right? It's good explanation of these topics, right? And this is just more simplified examples of these topics, which is completely fine. I get that. But I don't agree with the conclusions I just don't agree with the conclusions because there's so many ifs being made in this video. If you want to draw these conclusions, you have to talk about the nuance of these topics. And once you start diving into the nuance of these topics, you get into just how deep of these voting systems are and the unlikelihood of some of these like dictator situations to happen.
Choice method to rationally aggregate voter preferences. You always need...
I want to read the comment section for a second. There's nothing scarier than politicians coming together and singing Kumbaya. Yes! Oh my fucking god! Somebody get this guy a Nobel Prize! Thank you! Holy shit! Holy shit! Oh my god! If that isn't one of the best comments I've ever seen. Sorry, I didn't realize I was blocking all the comments. Yes, dude! Holy shit! Oh my god. Sorry, some of the other ones are like, there's nothing scarier than politicians coming together and singing Kumbaya. I want politicians to work together. That's kind of the whole goal. Comment section honestly made me a lot happier. I was expecting people to be like, oh, this is the greatest video of all time. People, thankfully, are seeing through that mostly.
But the mathematician Duncan Black found a much more optimistic theorem, which might actually represent reality better. If voters and candidates are naturally spread along a single dimension, say ranging from liberal on the left to conservative on the right, but this could apply to any other political dimension, well then, Black showed that the preference of the median voter will reflect the majority decision.
The median voter's choice...
I don't know if that's always a good thing. I mean, yes, I'm more of a centrist, right? So I want somebody in the middle to win all the time. But if 60% of the people, then the median would be over there. Huh. I still don't know if that's always a good thing.
Will often determine the outcome of the election, a result that aligns with the majority of voters, avoiding the paradoxes and inconsistencies highlighted by Arrow. And there's more good news.
Yeah, and then you as a voter just have the ability to almost shift that median.
Arrow's impossibility theorem only applies to ordinal voting systems, ones in which the voters rank candidates over others. There is another way, rated voting systems.
Fucking
the
dog
simplest
shit.
version is known as approval voting, where instead of ranking the candidates, the voters just tick the candidates they approve of.
Okay, I want to give this to you guys, okay? What do you think the problem with this voting system is going to be? What do you think I'm going to say it's going to be? Strategic voting. Let's once again, let's just use, so I'm not using Trump and Kamala all the time. Let's say you really want Marie Curie to win. And Carl Sagan has the second highest chance of winning this election. By you voting for both of them, you are no longer giving Marie Curie an advantage over Carl Sagan. What are you going to do? You are going to vote for just Marie Curie because she is your favorite candidate. Now, by doing that, you have just created first past the
There are also
polls,
versions where you can indicate how strongly you like each candidate, say from -10 strongly disapprove of to +10.
Same exact thing, right? Let's say it's between, why are we switching it? Isaac Newton and Lovelace, right? And let's say you like her a 5 out of 10, but she's the second most popular candidate. You're going to give her a -10 so that your candidate has a higher chance of winning. And now if you're rating everybody else the same, you have the same problem on board account where somebody in the middle could win.
Research has found that approval voting increases voter turnout, decreases negative campaigning, and prevents the spoiler effect. Voters could express their approval for a candidate without worrying about the size of the party they're voting for.
I think I can see all of that happening, right? Approval voting to me is better than first past the poll because worst case scenario just turns into first past the poll. But what advantage does it have over ranked voting? Literally none, because a lot of people are just going to do strategic voting, and I think that it doesn't really decrease the polarization that we have today at this moment, because people are just going to be giving the right candidate a 10, the other person a -10, and the people on the left are going to be giving their candidate a 10 and the right candidate a -10. And it's not going to fix the problem. In order to fix the problem, you need something like ranked voting that is not going to incentivize strategic voting.
It's also simple to
Maybe this would work in the future after ranked choice voting fixes the problem, but
tally.
it's not going to
Just
fix the
count up
problem.
what percentage of the voters approve of each candidate, and the one with the highest approval wins.
Kenneth Arrow was initially
Pissed off.
skeptical of rated voting systems, but toward the end of his life, he agreed that they were likely the best method.
Oh my fucking god! Get his name
Approval
off
voting
of
is
every
not
statue.
new. It was used by
that was
priests
rude.
in the Vatican to elect the Pope between 1294 and 1621. It's also used to elect the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Holy appeal
But
to authority.
it hasn't been widely used in large-scale elections, and so more real-world testing is likely required.
So is democracy mathematically impossible? Well, yes, if we use ranked choice methods of voting, which is what most countries in the world use to elect their leaders. And some methods are clearly better at aggregating the people's preferences to elect their leader. If we use ranked choice methods of voting, which is what most countries in the world use to elect their leaders.
That conclusion is why people are spamming this video at me. You have just villainized ranked choice voting after saying basically this entire video that it is still better than first past the poll. But you said it's not perfect, right? By you saying it's not perfect, you're dogging on it, which is, it is true. It is not perfect. But that's leaving a negative connotation when most of your viewers are American and now they're going to attack ranked choice voting. That is my issue.
And some methods are clearly better at aggregating the people's preferences than others. The use of first past the post voting feels quite frankly ridiculous to me, given all of its flaws. But just because things aren't perfect doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Being interested in the world around us, caring about issues, and being politically engaged is important.
I spoke too soon.
It might be one of the few ways we can make a real difference in the world. Like Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other forms that have been tried. Democracy is not perfect, but it's the best thing we've got. The game might be crooked, but it's the only game in town.
I'm frustrated. I'm just a bit frustrated, but fine video.